Welcome to the His Eternal Word podcast. I am your host, Rakeyia Collins, and the purpose of this podcast is to read the Bible from beginning to end every single year. If that mission sounds interesting to you, I'd encourage you to grab your Bible and read along with me. On today's episode of His Eternal Word, we are going to be reading Genesis 19 through 21. So starting with Genesis 19, God rescues Lot. The two angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he rose to meet them and bowed himself with his face to the earth and said, "My lords, please turn aside to your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet. Then you may rise early and go on your way." They said, "No, we will spend the night in the town square." But he pressed them strongly, so they turned aside to him and entered his house. And he made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. But before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both young and old, all the people to the last man, surrounded the house. And they called to Lot, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may know them." Lot went out to the men at the entrance, shut the door after him, and said, "I beg you, my brothers, do not act so wickedly. Behold, I have 2 daughters who have not known any man. Let me bring them out to you and do to them as you please. Only do nothing to these men, for they have come under the shelter of my roof." But they said, "Stand back." And they said, "This fellow came to sojourn, and he has become the judge. Now we will deal worse with you than with them." Then they pressed hard against the man Lot and drew near to break the door down. But the men reached out their hands and brought Lot into the house with them and shut the door. And they struck with blindness the men who were at the entrance of the house, both small and great, so that they wore themselves out groping for the door. Then the men said to Lot, "Have you anyone else here, sons-in-law, sons, daughters, or anyone you have in the city? Bring them out of the place. For we are about to destroy this place, because the outcry against its people has become great before the Lord, and the Lord sent us to destroy it." So Lot went out and said to his sons-in-law who were to marry his daughters, "Up, get out of this place, for the Lord is about to destroy the city." But he seemed to his sons-in-law to be jesting. As morning dawned, the angels urged Lot, saying, "Up, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, lest you be swept away in the punishment of the city." But he lingered. So the men seized him and his wife and his 2 daughters by the hand, the Lord being merciful to him, and they brought him out and set him outside the city. And as they brought them out, one said, "Escape for your life. Do not look back or stop anywhere in the valley. Escape to the hills, lest you be swept away." And Lot said to them, "Oh no, my lords. Behold, your servant has found favor in your eyes, and you have shown me great kindness in saving my life. But I cannot escape to the hills, lest the disaster overtake me and I die. Behold, this city is near enough to flee to, and it is a little one. Let me escape there. Is it not a little one? And my life will be saved." He said to him, "Behold, I grant you this favor also, that I will not overthrow the city of which you have spoken. Escape there quickly, for I can do nothing till you arrive there." Therefore the name of the city was called Zor. God destroys Sodom. The sun had risen on the earth when Lot came to Zor. Then the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire from the Lord out of heaven. And he overthrew those cities and all the valley and all the inhabitants of the cities and what grew on the ground. But Lot's wife behind him looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. And Abraham went early in the morning to the place where he had stood before the Lord. And he looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah, and toward all the land of the valley. And he looked, and behold, the smoke of the land went up like the smoke of a furnace. So it was that when God destroyed the cities of the valley, God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow when he overthrew the cities in which Lot had lived, Lot and his daughters. Now Lot went up out of Zoar and lived in the hills with his 2 daughters, for he was afraid to live in Zoar. So he lived in a cave with his 2 daughters, and the firstborn said to the younger, Our father is old, and there is not a man on earth to come into us after the manner of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve offspring from our father. So they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father. He did not know when she lay down or when she arose. The next day, the firstborn said to the younger, Behold, I lay last night with my father. Let us make him drink wine tonight also. Then you go in and lie with him, and we may preserve our offspring from our father. So they made their father drink wine that night also. And the younger arose and lay with him. And he did not know when she lay down or when she arose. Thus both the daughters of Lot became pregnant by their father. The firstborn bore a son and called his name Moab. He is the father of the Moabites to this day. The younger also bore a son and called him Benoni. He is the father of the Ammonites to this day. Okay, so chapter 19. Let's just start from the top with chapter 19, because the grace and the mercy of God in this chapter, as we think about it through the lens of Lot, is impeccable, and it's mind-blowing. So just to kind of paraphrase what we've been seeing from verse 1 all the way down to verse 11, we are in the setting of Sodom. And in Sodom, it is a place that is corrupt. It is a place that clearly sexual promiscuity is prevalent in this city, and angels that are in the disguise of men, they come into the city, and they have, plans to just sleep in the city, in like the city town, like the town square. They weren't going to go and stay with Lot or stay anywhere in particular, but Lot was just like, hey, guys, please stay with me. Please stay with me. So they end up going and staying with Lot. And thankfully they did, because the men of the city were trying to take advantage of them and have relations with them. I love the way that the ESV version puts it, because in verse 5 it says, and they called to Lot, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may know them. It is a very nice way of putting it. I know in other versions of the Bible, it is very clear what these men intended to do to these angels. And so this is how you know that the mind of these humans were depraved, because Lot says, hey, I have daughters who have not had relations before. I can give you them, right? But don't do this thing. Like, don't do this thing, that this is very dishonorable. And the men are like, no, we've made our mind up. This is what we're going to do. And if you don't allow us to do it, we're going to treat you worse than how we're going to treat them. And it is probably one of the most nerve-wracking, gut-wrenching chapters of the Bible when it comes down to sexual promiscuity and deviating from God's plan and God's intention, because it really speaks to a human mind that has gone off the rails, if you will, and decide to do something that is against the way that God has designed it. And we can see the response from these angels. They reach out and they grab Lot and they bring Lot back into the house. And they're like, listen, Lot, let's go ahead and just be real. We came here to destroy this city. And these men acting the way that they're acting is just bona fide proof of this city's got to go. So from there, what I love about verse 12 is that the men, the angels, are giving Lot the ability to go out and find sons-in-laws, daughters, or anyone else that may be connected to Lot in this city, that Lot wants to bring out of the city and save from this disaster. It literally puts me in the mind of earlier on in the book of the Bible, we were reading about Noah, and but Noah, because because Noah was righteous before the Lord, Noah's sons and his sons' wives, like everyone was saved that was attached to Noah. And it's a similar thing here where the angels are giving Lot the opportunity to bring out with him individuals that were with Lot to ensure that he can save the people that are with him. Like, if you have anyone else here, like, let's go ahead and get them. And we see that Lot goes and he tells his sons-in-law, but his sons-in-law are looking at him like he's joking, like this is a jest. One thing that I got from this is to be cognizant of what you think is a jest or not, especially when we're looking at it from a source perspective. Like, who is the source that is telling you this information? And is this someone that you think would joke in this particular manner? And so as we continue to read on through verse 15 all the way down to verse 20, one of the things that I love about this is that the angels literally tell Lot to get up and leave the city. They tell him not to look back and to escape to the hills or be swept away. I love a lot of things about this, as you can tell. But what I love also about verse 22 is that the angels tell him to escape there quickly, for I can do nothing till you arrive there. It speaks to the fact that because Lot was a man of righteousness and good standing, going back to being just, to not destroy the righteous with the unrighteous. And because that's not God's memo, that's not his MO, he's not going to do that. He's like, listen, I can't do anything until you are out of the way, because he can't violate his own word. And I absolutely love that. So all the way down to really the rest of the chapter, we see that Abraham actually sees that Sodom is destroyed. And the one thing I love about this next subparagraph is starting at verse 29, where it says that God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow when he overthrew the cities in which Lot had lived. That it makes you think again, is it truly based off of Lot, or is it based off of Abraham and Abraham's connection to Lot? Take it how you will, but being in right standing with God not only impacts your life, but also impacts the lives of the individuals that you are with. And that is so important, and that is so critical, because if you don't live a good life for yourself, live it for others. Live in right standing with God, because you want to make sure that it goes well with those that are going to come after you and those that are around you. And then lastly, here we see in verse 30 all the way down to verse 38, I think this piece of passage in scripture speaks for itself. We again see humans taking the reproduction cycle into their own hands. And we see that these daughters are deciding to do what technically should not be done. And they're deciding to sleep with their father in order to preserve their family line and make sure that they continue to have children. And so that's all of my commentary for chapter 19. So moving right along to chapter 20, Abraham and Abimelech. From there, Abraham journeyed toward the territory of the Negeb and lived between Kadesh and Zur. And he sojourned to Gerar. And Abraham said to Sarah, his wife, she is my sister. And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, behold, you are a dead man because of the woman you have taken, for she is a man's wife. Now Abimelech had not approached her, so he said, Lord, will you kill an innocent people? Did he not himself say to me, she is my sister? And she herself said, he is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and the innocence of my hands, I have done this. Then God said to him in the dream, yes, I know you have done this in the integrity of your heart, and it was why I kept you from sinning against me. Therefore, I did not let you touch her. Now then, return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, so that he will pray for you and you shall live. But if you do not return her, know that you shall surely die, you and all who are yours." So Abimelech rose early in the morning and called all his servants and told them all these things, and the men were very much afraid. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, "What have you done to us, and how have I sinned against you, that you have brought on me and my kingdom a great sin? You have done to me things that ought not to be done." And Abimelech said to Abraham, "What did you see that you did this thing?" Abraham said, "I did it because I thought there is no fear of God at all in this place. They will kill me because of my wife. Besides, she is indeed my sister, the daughter of my father, though not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. And when God caused me to wander from my father's house, I said to her, 'This is the kindness you must do to me. At every place to which we come, say of me, he is my brother.' Then Abimelech took sheep and oxen and male servants and female servants and gave them to Abraham and returned Sarah his wife to him. And Abimelech said, 'Behold, my land is before you. Dwell where it pleases you.' To Sarah he said, 'Behold, I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. It is a sign of your innocence in the eyes of all who are with you. And before everyone you are vindicated.' Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, and also healed his wife and female slaves, so that they bore children. For the Lord had closed all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife." So, chapter 20. This one's a very interesting one. I'm not going to pretend. It's very interesting because here again we see Abraham and Sarah. They are sojourning to a new territory. And in this new territory, they go back to I don't want to call it a scheme, because as we know, it is true that Sarah is Abraham's sister, given the genealogy that he broke down. It is very true. That's the case. But it also makes you think and makes you question, is a partial truth still the truth? My response to that would be no. A partial truth is not telling the full truth. And I believe that is why God says, when he speaks to Abimelech in his dream, God says, "Yes, I know that you've done this in the integrity of your heart, and that is why I kept you from sinning against me. Therefore, I did not let you touch her because of the information that you were given, and you weren't given full information. And that is why I kept you from sinning." I appreciate the grace and the justice that is shown here, because when you think that you're dealing in integrity, because you think all you can go off of is the information that you're provided at that particular point. And all he was provided was the fact that Sarah was Abraham's sister. So moving right along, we see that even though God said to Abimelech in this dream, "But if you do not listen to me and you do not give her back to him, this is what you're going to endure. I kept you from doing this because I know you weren't given the full information. However, now that you have it, you still have a choice to do what you want to do." And I love that because it speaks to the fact that God is never, ever going to make decisions for us. Abimelech still had the choice to say, "I'm going to keep her. I'm not going to give her back." Moving right along as we get into the rest of chapter 20, it shows to me God still has grace and mercy, even dealing with Abraham, because even after everything, Abraham is still keeping up the charade. Like, I don't know what else to call it because it's a charade. He's still keeping it up, and God still approaches Abimelech and says, "This is a prophet. He's going to pray for you and everything is going to be okay after he prays for you." It speaks to the fact that God chose Abraham, and he intentionally chose Abraham. That he's not going back on the fact that he chose Abraham, even though Abraham continues to be human like the rest of us. He still is going to stick with Abraham. So moving along to chapter 21, the birth of Isaac. The Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did to Sarah as he had promised. And Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age at the time of which God had spoken to him. Abraham called the name of his son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. And Sarah said, God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh over me. And she said, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. God protects Hagar and Ishmael. And the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. But Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, laughing. So she said to Abraham, cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son of this slave shall not be heir with my son Isaac. And the thing was very displeasing to Abraham on account of his son. But God said to Abraham, be not displeased because of the boy and because of your slave woman. Whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you, for through Isaac shall your offspring be named. And I will make a nation of the son of the slave woman also, because he is your offspring. So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder along with the child, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she put the child under one of the bushes. Then she went and sat down opposite him a good way off, about a distance of a bow shot. For she said, let me not look on the death of the child. And as she sat opposite him, she lifted up her voice and wept. And God heard the voice of the boy, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Up, lift up the boy and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make him into a great nation. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. And she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. And God was with the boy, and he grew up. He lived in the wilderness and became an expert with the bow. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt. A treaty with Abimelech. At that time, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, said to Abraham, God is with you in all that you do. Now, therefore, swear to me here by God that you will not deal falsely with me or with my posterity, but as I have dealt kindly with you, so you will deal with me and with the land where you have sojourned. And Abraham said, I swear. When Abraham reproved Abimelech about a well of water that Abimelech's servants had seized, Abimelech said, I do not know who has done this thing. You did not tell me, and I have not heard of it until today. So Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them to Abimelech, and the two men made a covenant. Abraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock apart. And Abimelech said to Abraham, what is the meaning of these 7 ewe lambs that you have set apart? These 7 ewe lambs you will take from my hand, that this may be a witness for me that I dug this well. Therefore, that place was called Beersheba, because there both of them swore an oath. So they made a covenant at Beersheba. Then Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, rose up and returned to the land of the Philistines. Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba and called there on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. And Abraham sojourned many days in the land of the Philistines. So, chapter 21, the birth of Isaac Oh man, it's like I am very excited for Sarah because it's like, man, this is great. Like, you finally get what you want. That's huge. This is wonderful. But I hate what it does to Hagar. Of course, just as a person that's reading this, I am cognizant of now anyway, I'm trying to be cognizant of how these aren't just characters. These are humans. These are people. These are like, they have lives. And so while I can be super excited for Sarah that she finally has the son that she wants, I also feel for Hagar and I feel for Abraham, because although this was not what God intended, as we look here in verse 11 of chapter 21, it says, and the thing was very displeasing to Abraham on account of his son. Like, that's the bond of the fact that, because now we knew from a few chapters ago that Ishmael was I think either 12 or 13. So he was in Abraham's life for a while. Like, he was in Abraham's life for a very long time. And now I have to let you go. And you are my son. I raised you. I brought you up. Like, you're about to enter into being a teenager, into the next phase of your life, essentially. And now I have to let you go. It's just from a human perspective, that is very, very tough. Right. But I love, of course, the comfort that God gives in verse 12. God said to Abraham, be not displeased because of the boy and because of your slave woman. Whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you, for through Isaac shall your offspring be named. And I will make a nation of the son of the slave woman also, because he is your offspring. Again, we see that things are happening to people around Abraham because of who Abraham is. If you've gotten nothing from Genesis so far, always remember it is important that you do what you need to do, not just for yourself. It is not just for yourself that you're living righteous, that you're walking with God, that you're listening to the word of God, but it is for the sake of your children, for the sake of those coming after you, because your life and your impact that you're going to have on the world matters. It matters in ways that you may not see in your lifetime, but please do not underestimate the fact that it matters. And so as we continue to read on, I love the fact that the Bible doesn't just say Abraham sent them on their way and that's it. I love the fact that the Bible continues to tell us what happens to Hagar and Ishmael. It doesn't necessarily, of course, go into as much detail like, oh, he had a son, at least at this point. It doesn't go into this at this particular point and say, oh, he had a son and his son had it doesn't do all of that. But it does at least give us the comfort to know that while they were journeying in the wilderness and they thought they ran out of water, God being God showed up and made a way to ensure that even though Abraham was not in the wilderness with Ishmael and with Hagar, that God was still there, because again, Ishmael is the offspring of Abraham. That connection and who you are connected to, it matters. It matters 10,000 times over. It matters. And so I love the fact that the Bible kind of goes down that route and kind of lets us know what happened to Ishmael and Hagar. But then we see in verse 22, it jumps back into Abraham's story and it begins to talk to us about Abimelech. And here's where we can see that the men are going back and forth over a well. And I know that in today's time, it's like a well, but back then that was huge because a well was a source of water. And as we all know, we're made up of 75% water, if not more than that. And so it's important that we have water. And we can see that they were going back and forth, and Abraham essentially puts a pin in it. And he says, listen, let these ewe lamb be witnesses that I am digging this well, that this well is for me and this well is for my people. And that's the way that we see chapter 21 end. It's like, listen, we don't need to have any more beef about wells and about water. So until next time, I will see you guys tomorrow to dive into chapter 22. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I hope that you found some value out of this content. If you did, please leave me a rating or review wherever you are listening. This would mean the world to me. I'd also love to hear from you on social media. Please feel free to reach out on Twitter at His Eternal Word, the number 1. And also please feel free to reach out to me on Instagram as well at His Eternal Word. Visit our website at www.hiseternalword.com, and I hope you stay tuned for the next episode.